Okay, I think that we should talk about Purim a little bit this week and next week. Prepare ourselves. It's an important holiday. And the nature of the holiday doesn't lend itself to very deep thought. So it's not like on Purim we're really going to reflect and meditate on the deeper ideas. So perhaps we should do it in advance. So when Purim comes, we'll be able to take out a second and recall all that we discussed. I'd like to begin with a medrash. This is a very peculiar medrash. We're going to focus today on the chapter of the Megillah, which I think is the center of the story. The decree has been passed, has been made, that the Jews are to be annihilated on the 13th of Adar. And the word goes out, the messengers are sent, and it says, in the beginning of the 4th chapter, that's the chapter we're going to focus on, it says, Mordechai yada es kol asher na'asa. Mordechai knew everything that had happened. Vayikra Mordechai es begadov. Mordechai tore his clothes. Vayobash sakva efer. He put on sackcloth and ashes. Vayitzei b'soch ha'ir. And he went out into the midst of the city. Vayizak za'aka gedol umara. And he cried out a great bitter cry. Now the question, which the commentaries is bothered by, Chazal are bothered by, what does it mean, Mordechai yadas kol asher na'asa? So Mordechai knew what had happened. Everyone knew what had happened. It says that the messengers went out, and people knew, and they began to respond, began to react. So what did Mordechai know that no one else knew? Now, before we explain what Chazal tell us, let me tell you al derech hapshat, in the manner of simple interpretation. If you look at the verses in the end of the 3rd chapter, which describe the way in which the decrees were disseminated, many commentators learn that there really were 2 parts to the decree. There was the part of the decree that was open, and the part which was sealed, meaning letters went out to prepare the army units, the military, the militia, be prepared for that day. To do what? You'll receive your orders then. On that day, there was a second envelope with the sealed orders, which were to go and initiate a pogrom against the Jews. So it's very interesting that when it says in the Megillah, the letters went out, it says, V'ho'ir Shushan novoicha. The city of Shushan was confused. And these Mefarshim understand that's very, very accurate. But they knew something was up, they didn't know exactly what. So they were confused. It doesn't say they were mourning, it doesn't say they were crying, it doesn't say they were praying, it says they were confused. And of course the Jews proudly suspected that it had something to do with them, because who else? But exactly what was up, they had no idea. But Mordechai, of course, was a member of the court. So Mordechai had inside information. So Mordechai yadas kol asher na'asa. Mordechai knew everything that had happened, and he then spread the word. And then after that it says that every place where the king's decree then reached, there was Evel Gadol Yehudim, there was great mourning among the Jews, because through the medium of Mordechai, they understood exactly what the content of the letters were. This is the interpretation which is al derech hapshat, in the way of simple interpretation. But in the Midrashim, we find some very interesting interpretations. And one of the interpretations, what I'll share with you, explains a custom. I can't say it's a widely spread custom, but it's a custom that some do practice. If you look in every siddur, after Oleinu, after the Oleinu prayer, which ends the davening, there are 3 verses that are cited. And I think most people, virtually all people, don't say those verses. I don't know of anyone who has the custom to recite them. You do? Good for you. But these are the first the verses. The first is as follows: Al tira mipachat pisom. Don't be scared of a sudden fright. Nishayas rishoyim kitovo. But don't be scared of the darkness of the wicked when it comes. So this is a verse in Mishlei. Next verse: Utsu eitza v'sufar. They plan a conspiracy and it is annulled. Davru davar v'lo yakum. They speak words which do not stand. Ki imanu kel. For God is with us. That's a verse in Yeshaya. There's another verse. V'adzikna anihu. God says, even until your old age, I am your protector. V'adseva ani esbo. I will bear you until your ripe old age. Ani asisi v'ani asa. I made you and I will carry you. Ani esbo. I will bear you. V'amalek. And I will rescue you. It's another verse in Yeshaya. So 3 verses that express tremendous confidence that God will protect us through thick and thin. And it makes perfect sense why we should say them after Aleinu, because Aleinu ends the prayer. So we're about to go out and face the world, face the day. So we want to express our confidence in God's saving power. God will protect us, help us meet whatever challenges we're going to face that day. But the source of these 3 psukim is really a medrash in Megillas Esther. It says that Mordechai yadas kol asher na'asa. He knew everything that had happened. How did he know? So there was a very interesting custom in those days. There was a method of divination that you'd go over to a child and ask the child, what was the last verse that you learned? And he'd give you the pasuk, give you the verse, and that verse was an omen. It had significance. So when Mordechai heard of the decree of Haman, he went out and he approached 3 children, one after the other. So he went to the first child, and the first child said, Al tira mipachat pisom. Don't be scared of the sudden fright. Umeshayas risham kitavo. In the darkness of the wicked when it comes. He said, don't worry, nothing to worry about, no problem. He went to the second child. The second child said, Utsu eitza v'sufar. They take counsel. The counsel is annulled. Davru davar v'lo yakum. They speak words. The words don't stand. Ki imanu kel. God is with us. Nothing to worry about. Went to the third child. The third child said, V'adzikna anihu. Until your old age, I am your protector. V'atseva ani esbo. I will carry you until your ripe old age. Ani asisi v'ani asa. I made you. I will carry you. Ani esbo v'amalek. I will bear you and I will rescue you. Third verse. And at that point, Mordechai was overjoyed. He knew there was no danger, no problem. Right? 3 children gave him a glowing prediction. The Medrash says that at that point, Mordechai ran into Haman. And Haman sees Mordechai is overjoyed. And he says, what are you smiling about? And he told Haman, I'm smiling because I know that all your plans are going to come to naught. Nothing to worry about. So it seems a little funny. In other words, midrashim sometimes can be fanciful, but it's hard to understand the medrash which seems to go so counter to the story. It says that Mordechai knew everything that happened. He went into the street, he cried a bitter cry, he put on sackcloth and ashes, and comes the medrash and says, no, that Mordechai really was overjoyed. He was confident, he had these 3 predictions. He knew that there was no danger for the Jews. I mean, how do you reconcile that with the simple reading of the Megillah? Now, the truth is this. The truth is that the Medrash is telling us something which is really implicit in the text itself. Because later in the chapter, it says that Mordechai sends a message to Esther, that Esther should go and beg on behalf of her people before the king. And Esther tells him that, you know, that there's a rule here, that if you go to the king not being summoned, that's a capital offense, unless the king pardons you by putting out the golden scepter. And he said, and she continued, and I haven't been called for 30 days. which could mean one of two things. It can mean either that what's the point of going now uninvited? It'll be certainly in a very short period of time. He's going to call me. I haven't been there for a month, so I might as well just wait until he calls me. Or it may be that she was saying that apparently I've fallen in disfavor because he hasn't called me for a month, so I'd really be sticking my neck out if I go unasked. And then Mordechai says like this. He says, "Al t'damiv b'nafsheich lihimalei beis hamelech mikol haYehudim." Don't think that you're going to be spared from among all the Jews. You're the only one who's going to be spared because you're in the house of the king. Because if you are silent at this time, salvation will come to the Jews from elsewhere. But you and your father's house will be destroyed. And who knows? Perhaps it was for a moment such as this that you became queen. And this is a very, very perplexing thing that Mordechai should say. Let's analyze it. Because Mordechai tells her, listen, if you don't go, the Jews are going to be saved. The Jews are going to be saved. Somehow, some other way. You're going to suffer the consequences. You and your father's house will be lost. And perhaps this is the very reason why you became the queen. What was the basis of this confidence? Why was Mordechai so certain that the Jews would be saved? He had a prophecy. According to the Medrash, he had gone to these children. There was a divination. He knew that the Jews were saved. But it wasn't a foregone conclusion that the story would have a happy ending. Because it's true that the Jews as a nation were saved, but there was one Jew, one Jewess, who was in mortal danger, and that was Esther. And therefore that's what Mordechai told Esther. Let's understand it. Let's understand it deeply. The principle seems to be like this. The Ribono Shel Olam made the world for the sake of Yisrael. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world for a purpose, and that purpose will only be fulfilled through the medium of Yisrael. The annihilation of the entire Jewish nation is therefore inconceivable. In fact, the Malbim, not quoting the Medrash, just says that it was axiomatic for Mordechai that the Jews as a nation could not be destroyed. They didn't even need the divination. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable God could wipe out the Jewish people. It would go counter to the very plan for creation. So therefore Mordechai was confident that there was no danger to the Jewish people at all. But the question is this: what would be the mechanism by which the Jews would be saved? There are many possibilities. It could be this way, it could be that way, it could be a third way, it could be a fourth way. There are many, many contingency plans, many different ways that God could bring about the salvation of the Jews. And it could very well be that this is a test for an individual. You are put in the position where you could be the vehicle for their salvation. Are you going to rise to the challenge? Are you going to do what you're meant to do? Or will you not? Not that it will make a difference for the Jews. Because if the Jews aren't saved by method A, they'll be saved by method B. If not by method B, by method C. If not method C, method D. So there are fallback plans for the salvation of the Jewish people. The Jewish people aren't at risk at all. But if you are in place, if you are in a position to be the one through whom the salvation will come, and you ignore that fact, and you don't act, there'll be consequences, not for the Jews, for you. For you. And that's exactly what Mordechai told Esther. He says, listen, you may be thinking that the Jews are in danger, but you're safe, because after all, you're in the palace. No one knows you're a Jew. You should know it's the exact opposite. The Jews are safe and you're in danger. Why? Because if you don't take advantage of your position, the Jews will be safe some other way. Don't worry. There's plan B and plan C and plan D. Many, many, many options. Many, many fallback plans. But you apparently are in prime position. The fact that you became queen means that apparently you are plan A. If you use your position and influence with the king, you'll save yourself. Otherwise, you'll be destroyed. Question?
There's another possible interpretation that given that the Jewish nation can't be destroyed for the reasons you gave earlier, it doesn't mean that hundreds of thousands of Jews can't die and blood won't run in the streets. The Jewish nation wasn't destroyed in the Holocaust. It survived, but tremendous pain. He could have well been saying to her, look, if you go to the king, you can prevent a great deal of bloodshed. You know, we'll come out of this in good shape at the end of the day. If you don't go to the king, we're still going to win. We're still going to survive. But there's going to be a lot of blood on your head that wouldn't have had to happen.
No, it's true. Mordechai could have said that, but that's not the point that he makes. In other words, if you look at his words, he isn't saying that. Mordechai could have said like this, listen, that the Jewish people as a whole will survive, but there could be terrible losses, and therefore you have to do what you can do to avoid that. He doesn't say that. He says, the Jews will survive, but you will be destroyed.
But survive does not... survive is a minimalist position.
No, but I'm making the point that if Mordechai was concerned for the losses of life, that should have been the argument. He should have said, listen, you have to go. Why? Because it's true that the Jews will be spared, but there could be losses which you can prevent. But it's more than that. It's more than that. You see, Mordechai is coming to respond to what he perceives as Esther's reluctance. Because Esther's reluctance is clearly rooted in the fact that she does not see herself as being in danger. Now, this Sfas Emes really even makes this argument a halachic argument. He makes the following point. Let's say, for example, you are currently safe. You're not in any danger. Would you be allowed to endanger yourself? No. Well, let's say, for example, you are in a situation where your death is an imminent certainty. And the only way you could save yourself is by putting yourself in a different type of risk. Would you be allowed to? Certainly, you're going to die anyway. Now, the source of this is really a Gemara. The Gemara says that if a person is ill, back in Talmudic times, he was not allowed to go to a Gentile doctor. The Gentile doctors were suspect on killing their patients. So say you have a sore throat, and you want to go to the doctor and get a prescription for the sore throat. You can't go to a Gentile doctor. Why? Because in those days, the Gentiles were anti-Semites. They were killers. So he might bring you into his examining room and cut your throat. So you wouldn't be allowed to endanger yourself by going to such a doctor. But the Gemara says, but let's say a person has a terminal illness, and if it's left untreated, he's certainly going to die. Can he go to such a doctor? Certainly. He's not putting himself at greater risk. The doctor may treat him. If the doctor kills him, he's not worse off. He's going to die anyway. So it's the same thing. This is what Hashem says here. Esther says it's dangerous for me to go. The king hasn't told me 30 days. There's no rule. If you come unasked, the king will execute you. It's a danger. So Mordechai says that argument only makes sense if you see yourself as not being in danger. Because if you see yourself as being in danger, then your argument is not an argument at all. What do you mean? I shouldn't put myself at risk. You're already at risk. You're at worse risk. So that's what Mordechai said. Don't think that you're going to be spared. Don't think you're not in danger. To the contrary. The Jews are safe, you're in danger. That's the whole gist of the verse. Well, let's understand what the issue over here is. I think that there's a very, very important idea over here. All the promises that God makes to the Jewish people are to the Jewish people as a nation. As a nation, not as individuals. There's no guarantee to individuals. The right of an individual, or the option of an individual, to bank on that promise is dependent on the extent to which he considers himself and makes himself part of the nation, part of the community. If a person attaches himself to the community, a person cares for the community, a person engages himself, is involved with the community, then he can be protected under the umbrella of the community. He's an integral part of the nation. To the extent that there's a havtacha, there's a promise that the nation will survive, to the extent that he is integral to the life of the nation, he'll survive. What about a person who cuts himself off from the nation? Severs his ties, disconnects himself. Then he won't be protected. He's not part of the nation. In his own thinking, he's not part of the nation. There was a very, very interesting thing. Haman is from Amalek. Haman is from Amalek. And Amalek, of course, these are the paradigmatic anti-Semites, Jew haters. And Amalek would like to destroy every last Jew. Who does Amalek attack in the Midbar? Who does Amalek attack in the desert? Which Jews? Which one? That's what it says. It's an amazing thing. It says in the verse, "Vayizanei v'cha." They attacked your tail. So what does it mean, the tail? So Rashi says these were people that were expelled from under the canopy of the Ananei Kavod, of the clouds of glory. These are the people that were straggling behind. They couldn't keep up. Now, what does it mean they couldn't keep up? It doesn't mean physically they couldn't keep up. Spiritually they couldn't keep up. They were sinful people. And they could not be under the protective canopy of the divine clouds. They were expelled. And these are the people that Amalek attacked specifically. Why? Because Amalek has this intuition that although they would like to kill every last Jew, but they can't destroy the Jewish people. And those Jews who are under the canopy of the Ananei Kavod, those Jews who are part of the nation and are enveloped with the clouds of glory, they can't touch. They're untouchables. Who can Amalek attack? Amalek can attack those who are separated, who are not part of the people. And by the way, it's an amazing thing that God stands up for the honor of those Jews. In other words, God says that there'll be an eternal war until the end of time against Amalek to take revenge for this attack. So whose honor is God standing up for? The honor of these stragglers, these Jews who were expelled, that God himself expelled from the Ananei Kavod. When Amalek had the audacity to attack them, God says that I will exact revenge until the end of time. It's an amazing thing how every Jew is precious. If you learn nothing else from the Purim story, you have to learn that. The honor of every Jew. But this is the idea. Amalek has this intuition that it can only attack those Jews who have cut themselves off or who are cut off from the life of the nation. Haman, when he goes to Achashverosh and tries to secure permission to annihilate the Jews, so the Gemara says an interesting thing. The Gemara says that there's no person who knew how to speak Lashon Hara like Haman. Haman was the best. Haman was the best. Because everything he said to Achashverosh was really, it was addressing a objection that Achashverosh could raise. And the commentaries understand that he wasn't only addressing Achashverosh's objections, he was addressing God's objections. In other words, that if God would stand up for the Jewish people, Haman had an argument against God, that the Jews were deserving destruction. And one of the things that Haman says is that Yeshna Amelcha, there is a nation Mufuzar Umufayra, there is a nation which is scattered and spread. They've become disintegrated. They've become fallen apart, splintered. And the Svarim tell us that this was a tremendous kitrug, this is a tremendous accusation vis-a-vis God. Because vis-a-vis Achashverosh, the Gemara explains, that Achashverosh raised the objection that if we annihilate the Jews, won't that create a bald spot in my kingdom? There'll be a district which previously was populated, now it's empty, it'll be a bald spot. Someone said, no, don't worry. They don't live together, they're splintered, they're spread, scattered. A Jew here, a Jew there, a Jew there. You wipe them out, no one will notice. So that's how he responded to Achashverosh's objection. But the Svarim say that he was also responding to God's objection. We're going to destroy the Jewish people. The Jewish people are very important. No, they're scattered, they're spread. In other words, your intention is that there be a unified Jewish people. These will be the vehicle for the fulfillment of the divine purpose. But if the Jews in fact are scattered, spread, and splintered, then they can be dispensed with. They're not going to fulfill their purpose anyway. When Mordechai wanted to arouse the Jewish people to repentance, he said, Lech kenosis kol Yehudim, gather all the Jews together. It was the gathering, it was the coming together that really was the tikkun, it was the rectification of this accusation that Haman made.
But wasn't the fact that you're scattered in the end one of the strengths? Because they actually were fighting in 127 provinces.
No. That's what we're saying. The Svarim are telling us that the scattered doesn't mean scattered in the physical sense. In other words, the Jews can be very, very close in their thinking and in their hearts, even if one lives 1,000 miles away from the other person. But that physical separation may have been a strategic advantage or a tactical advantage. That's something else. But what Haman was making the point was that they're not only scattered in that physical sense.
The point he was making to Achashverosh was the physical one.
Yeah.
And the one he's making to God is the spiritual.
They're scattered in a spiritual sense. They don't feel close to each other. They don't feel at one with each other. Now, but Mordechai is saying like this to Esther, that really the Jewish people, it'll work out. It'll work out for the Jewish people. Now, the Jewish people, in times of crisis, usually do come together. It's an amazing thing. Because we experience our greatest unity when we are facing a common threat. So therefore, Mordechai said, don't worry about the Jews. You're in danger. Because you're in a situation where fate has separated you from the Jewish people. You're in the palace, no one knows your identity, you can get away with it. If you think you're going to be spared, you should know it's the opposite. Apparently there's a decree in heaven against the Jewish people. The people who align themselves with the nation will be beneficiaries of God's promise. The people who sever their contacts with the nation, they're the ones who are at risk. And therefore, really, it's only you who are in danger. So the question we asked was, in light of the fact that Mordechai was confident for the Jewish people, what is this very, very bitter cry? The bitter cry is for Esther. Because he understands that, of course, the Jews will be safe somehow, some other way, some other place. But Esther, according to Chazal, was actually his wife. She's in mortal danger. And in fact, when Esther finally understands Mordechai's message, she says, gather the Jews, v'tsumu olai, and fast for me. In other words, he doesn't tell Mordechai, gather the Jews and let them pray for themselves, or pray for the success of my mission. He says, let them pray for me. In other words, Esther understands that she, in fact, is the one who's in danger, and perhaps only she's the one who's in danger. I'm going to point out something, just as an aside, that we read the Megillah and we think, happy ending, all's well that ends well. And I think we pointed out many times that not for Esther. Whereas the Jews are saved, we have a holiday of Purim, and Baruch Hashem, we've celebrated Purim for the last few thousand years, and it's been joyous. But what happens to Esther? She remains married to Achashverosh. It's a very, very, very sad thing.
Which implies it's not good for Mordechai either.
Not good for Mordechai either. Mordechai became very powerful politically. He became the second in command to Achashverosh. But is that what a Jew wants? In other words, it's a sad ending for the two heroes of the story. Okay, so this is, I think, just the basic overview of the chapter.
I'm sorry, I missed what happened to Esther.
She remained married to Achashverosh. Nothing happened to Esther. The story just fizzled out. We don't see that. She remains the queen of Persia. According to Chazal, she has a child with Achashverosh. Daryavish II, who was the king actually, who later on gives permission to resume the building of the Beis HaMikdash. The Malbim understands. Pardon?
He funds a big part of it as well.
He funds it. The Malbim understands that it was the influence of his mother involved, but she is still married to Achashverosh. Now I want to share with you two little maimarim, two little ideas that Rav Hutner Zecher Tzadik Levracha writes in his Sefer on Purim called Pachad Yitzchak. And it's an amazing thing that Rav Hutner, you read these little two ideas, it seems he made the same mistake twice. He mistranslated a verse. But, of course, it's not a mistake. In other words, he was revealing something very, very deep here. These thoughts of his were said on Purim, at the Purim Suda. And perhaps slightly under the influence. So Chazal say that Mishenichnas Yayin, when the wine goes in, Yatsa Sod, the secrets come out. So sometimes there may be something which is not so apparent on the surface, but there might be a deeper intention. I'm going to tell you the verse. I'll tell you what the simple meaning of the verse is. Then I'll tell you how he apparently understood the verse, misunderstood it, but really deeply understood it. And I'll tell you the two ideas that he says based on this. It says that Mordechai told Esther the following. Said that you have to go. Don't think you're safe. Because if you are silent at this time, the Jews will be saved in some other way, and you and your father's house will be destroyed. What is Mordechai referring to when he says, if you are silent? If you are silent, don't do what? So the simple interpretation is if you're silent and you don't go to Achashverosh to plead on behalf of the Jews. But Rav Hutner twice, in two different essays, seems to understand the verse that what Mordechai was saying, if you are silent and you don't pray for the Jews, you'll suffer the consequences. I'll tell you the two ideas that he says. This is how he apparently understood the verse. That Mordechai was telling Esther that if you are silent and you don't pray for the Jews, then it will be a catastrophe for you, a personal catastrophe for you. And I'll tell you the two things that he says, and I'll tell you how he understood the verse and why I understood it that way. The first, he says the following. He raises a very interesting question. We know that Esther was an orphan. Esther was an orphan. Ki ein lo avo ein. She was raised by Mordechai because she didn't have a mother, didn't have a father. And the Gemara says that it's not that she simply lost her parents. The parents died at the earliest possible time. That when she was conceived, at that point her father died, and her mother died in childbirth. So she never had a father and mother. So Rav Hutner asks a question, so it's very peculiar that Mordechai should tell Esther that if you are silent, at ubeis avich tovedu, you and your father's house will be destroyed. In other words, to make mention of her father's house to a person who really never had a father seems peculiar. Now, I'm not saying this is the most difficult question, an agonizing question, but let me just tell you what he does with this question. It's like this. It says, in Parshas B'Shalach, when we read the story of the splitting of the Red Sea, it says that when the Jews saw that the sea was in front of them and the Egyptians were behind them, it says they cried out to God. So Rashi says a very strange comment, that tafsu umnus avaisa. That here the Jews took hold of the occupation of their forefathers. They did what their forefathers were accustomed to doing. Because we know that in times of trouble, Avram prayed, Yitzchak prayed, Yaakov prayed. So the Jews prayed. Why did they pray? They took hold of the occupation, the profession of their forefathers. That's what Rashi says. So the Maral is bothered. What did Rashi come to say over here? What's bothering Rashi? Why is there a need for comment? It seems to be a very simple thing. You're in trouble, you pray. It's a very reasonable response. What is bothering Rashi? Rashi has to explain that tafsu umnos avaisam. They follow their forefathers' occupation. So the Maral says like this. He says that these Jews, were not apparently very, very pious Jews, very devout. Because you see, in the next verse, they start complaining to Moshe Rabbeinu that it would have been better had you not taken us out. Better we should have died in Egypt. We're not talking about great tzaddikim. Right? These are rabble-rousers. And yet they pray. Why do they pray? It's a Jewish habit. Right? Jews always pray. Right? Abraham prayed, Yitzchak prayed, Yaakov prayed. It's a habit. So tafsu umnus avaisam. They took hold of the habit of their forefathers. So the Maral understands that what Rashi is trying to do is to, in a sense, minimize the value of this prayer. Because it wasn't really that sincere. Right? It was just a habit. And this is what Jews traditionally did, so this is what they did. That's what Rashi is, because these are really not very serious prayers. But they pray. It's a habit. So Rav Hutner says, so you'd think that, if it wasn't really a very lofty prayer, probably the prayer made no difference. And in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu says in the next verse, says, don't worry, Hashem yilochem lochem, God will wage war for you. Vatem tacharishu, you remain silent. Well, don't say anything. So it seems that Moshe Rabbeinu is even telling them that, listen, don't worry, your prayer is not going to make a difference. God has already promised, he'll split the Red Sea, and just remain silent. No need to pray. Yet, we have many sources that the Jews' prayer was effective. For example, the Talmud says that on a fast day, one of the prayers that is said is that Mi sha'ana alav aseinu al Yamsuf, God who answered our forefathers' prayers at the Red Sea, should answer our prayers. So it seems that the prayers were effective. So Footnote says a very interesting conjecture. He says like this. He says that prayers can be effective in one of two ways. One way that prayers can be effective is, you ask God, and God responds to your prayer, compassion, mercy, responds to your prayer. There's another type of prayer. God is ready to help the Jewish people. You have to demonstrate you're a Jew. You have to show you're a Jew. You have to show you're faithful to your heritage. That you align yourself with the Jewish people. You do that, that's good enough, and God will help you. So he says like this, these people, their prayer was not such a powerful, effective prayer. It wasn't said with great fervor. It was just a Jewish habit. But by demonstrating this Jewish habit, they were showing that they are part of the Jewish people. They are not estranged from the heritage of their forefathers. They took hold of the profession of their forefathers. They followed in the ways of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So that, Moshe Rabbeinu said, there's no need to say any more than that. No need to say any more than that. Because once you show that you identify with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, now you can be saved. So Footner says like this. Footner says that what Mordechai was telling Esther was like this. He says, of course the Jewish people are going to be saved. But the problem is, as we said, you're in danger. How are we going to get out of this danger? By showing that you're a part of the Jewish people. Therefore, you have to pray. You have to do what Jews do when they're in danger. What do Jews do when they're in danger? They pray. if you don't pray, you and your father's house will be lost. Why does he say your father's house? Because that's what you'll be doing. You'll be declaring that you're disconnected from your father's house. You'll be failing to identify with your father's house, and therefore you'll be lost. That's why the father's house is mentioned here. But apparently understands that what Mordechai is talking to Esther about is praying. Not beseeching Achashverosh, praying to God. And that's what he's saying, that if you don't pray to God, that will be a failure to align with your father's tradition, and therefore your father's house will be lost. That's one place. Another place it says the same, makes the same mistake apparently. It says like this. Because Mordechai told Esther, don't think that you're safe. Don't think that you're safe. So Footnote says, why does Mordechai begin with that? So he says an amazing thing. Because I'll tell us that let's say you pray for someone else. You pray for someone else. And you need that same thing. You'll be answered first. What's the idea? You like this. In other words, let's say, for example, you come to me and you tell me you need something. And this is the type of thing you need. I never needed it. I don't need it. I'm happy not to have it. I can't feel your need. You know, you come and tell me that you need a vacation in Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii. I've never had the urge to go to Hawaii. So, how deeply can I feel your need? If you tell me you're hungry for bread, I know what it is to be hungry. When the end of your Kippur comes, I'm also hungry. Right? So that I can understand. I can understand your need. A person, for example, you have a person who has no children. The person is childless. And the person comes to you, you should pray for them to have children. And let's say, you have children. You got married, 10 months later, you have your first child. You never had the experience of trying to have a child, not being able to have a child. You can't understand that person's pain. But if you're mispal b'atchalei, if you pray for another person, you need that same thing, that means you can understand that person's pain. And you are in the same situation even now. And yet, instead of praying for yourself, you take your pain and use it as the impetus to pray for him. That's a very powerful prayer. So Mordechai told us like this. He said, if you were safe and the Jews were in danger, and you'd pray for the Jews, okay, that'll be one level of prayer. But it wouldn't be the lofty prayer of the person who needs to be saved himself. But you should know you're also in danger. So therefore, when you pray for the Jewish people, you're not praying as a bleeding heart liberal, who has plenty of money praying for the poor. Because you're praying for the Jews as a person who is in the same situation. It's tzarech la'aseh davar. You need the same thing because you're also in danger, and yet you're directing your prayers for them. That's a very powerful prayer. That's what I said. Again, how do they understand the verse? Mordechai is talking to Esther about praying for the Jews or pleading for the Jews with Achashverosh. But Rav here revealed a deep secret over here, which is not implicit in the text. There's a Kabbalah, there's a tradition, which Chazal mention in several places, that in Megillas Esther, whenever it says the word Melech without Achashverosh, there's a double meaning. It's a reference, of course, to Achashverosh, because that's the simple meaning of the verse, but it also is a reference to the Ribono Shel Olam. It's a reference to God also. Now, the place where Chazal say this is in the first paragraph of the Megillah. It says, Bayom Hashvi, on the seventh day, Kitov Lev Melech Bayoyin, when the king's heart was happy with wine, so he summoned Vashti. Vashti didn't come. Vashti was executed, and so on and so forth. So the Gemara says, what does it mean, Kitov Lev Melech Bayoyin? It says, Gemara, that day was Shabbos. The seventh day of the party was Shabbos. And Ribono Shel Olam was happy with the wine of the Jewish people. But when the Jewish people sat to their Shabbos meal, they made kiddush, and they drank wine, what did the Jews do? They sang Zmiras, and they said words of Torah, and it was a wonderful, uplifting spiritual experience. God was very happy, and because God was very happy, he brought about that Vashti, who was the great enemy of the Jewish people, who used to take Jewish girls and abuse them, that she should be deposed on that day. So the Marsha, the commentator, says that where did Chazal see this in the verse? So he says, because it says in the verse, it was on the seventh day, Kitov Leit HaMelech Vayoyin, when the king was glad with wine. It doesn't say Achashverosh, it says the king. And we have a tradition that whenever the verse says the king, without mentioning Achashverosh, you can understand it in two ways. It could be a reference to Achashverosh, it could be a reference to Hashem. So there's a double meaning. The simple meaning is Achashverosh was merry, and he got drunk, and he summoned Vashti to come and display her beauty, and of course we know how the story unfolds. There's also a second meaning in the verse, which is that it's a reference to the Rebbeinu Shlomo. God was happy, and therefore he brought Vashti's downfall for what she did to Jewish girls. Now, this Kabbalah, this tradition, is something which is waiting for someone to do a commentary on the Megillah and go through verse by verse, every single verse where it says Hamelach without Achashverosh, and show how it can apply to the Rebbeinu Shlomo. I mean, there must be dozens of such references. To the best of my knowledge, no one has ever worked it out. Right? Now, like in every last case, how it could be a reference to the Rebbeinu Shlomo. So this may be a challenge if you want to do a book, right? You may be able to make some money.
This is the second book you proposed lately.
What was the first one?
Paro and Melech Mitzrayim.
What?
Nobody's ever analyzed the use of Paro versus Melech Mitzrayim.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. That's what you said.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So this is another one, right? That when it says Hamelach in the Megillah Esther, what is it a reference to? So Rav Hutner says over here, what does it say? It says that Mordechai commanded her, Lavo el Hamelach, to go to the Melech, Ul'ischanein lefanov, and to beg Alama for her nation. From Achashverosh. So Rav Hutner understood, apparently, that there must be a double meaning in this verse. Right? It doesn't just mean to go and pray to Achashverosh, beg Achashverosh for mercy. It also has a second meaning, to go and pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, pray to Hashem, that Hashem should save the Jewish people.
Rav Hutner gets it, but it doesn't seem like Esther does.
What? No, so
Esther's reaction.
It's both. There's a double meaning. And in fact, Esther does say that. Esther says, listen, Lech Knossos Kol Yehudim, gather all the Jews, and let them pray for me. V'gam ani v'nara osai otzum kain, and I and the maidens will also fast. So she was saying that she'll also pray.
No, her initial hesitancy, she would have no fear of prayer. She seems to have a fear.
Mordechai is saying both. Mordechai is saying both. Of course, it doesn't mean only to pray to God. It also means to go to Achashverosh too. So that was her objection, going to Achashverosh. Right? But ultimately, when she agrees, she says, do both. So go to Achashverosh, but they should pray, and she'll also pray.
Right.
So it's an amazing thing. Rav Hutner says that really what Mordechai is telling us is that she has to pray too. She has to pray too. So what is the significance of this? So this is what he says. Now we understand what he's saying. The whole issue over here is Esther cutting herself off from her Jewish heritage. Correct? So there's really two aspects to this. There's two aspects to our connection to our fellow Jews. Because we are connected to each other laterally, right? Because there are 5 million Jews that are alive in 2010. And I'm connected to each one of them.
15 minutes?
Through my concern, through my interest, etc., etc., etc. But is that enough? Is that enough? There's another aspect of connection. In other words, we it's not just we're connected to each other, but we're all connected to the same thing. We're all connected to our heritage. We're all connected to our Masorah. We're all connected to our tradition. That's also part of the connection. It's not enough that all Jews should feel a connection to each other. It has to be that all Jews feel a connection to each other because we are all connected to the same heritage. And that's the double meaning. That's what they're saying. In other words, if Esther was going to go and beg Achashverosh, it's true that she's attaching herself to the Jewish people. She's maintaining her ties to the Jewish people. There is a bond of concern, of interest. She's bothered by the fact that they're at risk. And that's a very wonderful thing. It's a very wonderful thing. But it's not enough. It's not enough for a Jew to be connected to every other Jew. It has to be that as Jews we are connected to our heritage. So Footnote says, what is the tafsu umnos avaisam? What is the connection that we have to our heritage? That's prayer. When we pray, we are following the ways of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that's what Mordechai was saying, that you have to do both. Because you have to plead to Achashverosh, that's an expression of your concern for every other Jew. You have to pray to God, because that is your connection to the heritage that unites us. If you don't pray, you can engage in political activity, lobbying, and using influence, and that's very nice. It shows your concern for Jews. But it's not that you're connected to the same tradition, the same Torah. You know, there are defense organizations for Jews today. You have the ADL, and you have the World Jewish Congress, and all these organizations. And it's very nice. It's very nice that there are Jews who feel sympathy for every other Jew, and are willing to lobby, and willing to negotiate, and willing to use political pressure to better the lot of Jews around the world. It's a very, very nice thing. But it's not enough. It's not enough that we're concerned for every other Jew and establish an attachment that way. We have to all connect to the common source that unites all of us. That's following the ways of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that's what Footnote says is the double meaning of the verse. You have to go and beg Achashverosh, but you have to pray also. If you don't pray, you are disconnecting yourself from your father's house. If you disconnect yourself from your father's house, you are still in mortal danger. Right? The identification as a Jew is not just the ethnic Jew, the political Jew. It has to be the Jew as a link in the chain of Masorah going back to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Right? And therefore this is integral. It's not enough that Esther goes to Achashverosh. Esther has to pray as well. That's the umnus havaisim. That's the profession of the Jew, is prayer. Yes?
When you've referred to a number of times to the fact that Esther has to pray also. But, I mean, she came from a house of being brought up by Mordechai. I mean, she was always a from yid all the time, throughout her life. No, it's almost as if you're saying, I can't remember if she's been in the palace for now 6 or 7 months or a year, I can't remember, but it's almost as like you might be saying that she forgot about her heritage.
No, I think that he's saying something very, very important that we all need to hear. There's very often, when do we start praying?
When we're in need, when we find trouble.
That is when we're in trouble. We start praying when we are helpless. But as long as there's something that we can do, we don't pray.
Last resort.
Prayer is like our last resort, exactly. And as long as there's something we can do, we don't pray. That's the problem. We go to doctors and we do this and we do that, and then when it's hopeless, then we start praying. Mordechai is saying you have to start praying now. Right? No, don't wait until your mission Achashverosh fails. You got to start praying now. And in fact, Esther did that. She prayed before she went. And the other idea is that, again, to make that an effective prayer, then you have to realize the danger you're in. Because then it's mispal ba'ad chaveru v'tzarech leisedavar. Your friend needs it. You're praying for that for your friend. That makes it even more effective. So it's very, very interesting that prayer, Rav is telling us, can be effective in a totally new way, a totally new concept of prayer. that the mere fact that we pray shows that we are true to our tradition. We are true to the ways of Rabbi Yaakov. We are attached to our heritage. We do what Jews have traditionally done. And that itself is effective, even if the prayer is not particularly elegant or fluent. Of course, it's a day of prayer. And we don't utilize it enough, unfortunately. It's brought in the Svarim that it says in Purim, when a poor man comes to you, call a poshet yodonos, whoever puts out his hand, you give to him. So it's brought in the Svarim that Rebbeinu Shalom acts the same way. That if we pray, there's a special power of prayer on Purim. Who takes advantage of it? In other words, we really pray as we should on Purim. On Halavai, we should pray even half decently. Usually we're so distracted and so busy. Our prayers are gobbled up. There's a story which is told that the Chidushei Arim told the story. He told the story about one of the Talmidei Baal Shem, but it's almost certain that the story was made up. It was only a mashal. He says there once was one of the disciples of the Baal Shem who was a master of prayer. A master of prayer. And whatever he would pray for, he would get, he'd be answered. The problem was he was a shikker. He was a drunk. So he never prayed. Never prayed. They never could get him to pray because he was always shikker. So Baal Shem Tov told others of his students to go to this person and sober him up, whatever you need to do, to tie him up, pour a gallon of coffee down his throat, whatever you need to do, sober him up and get him to pray that Mashiach should come. And they weren't able to. He outsmarted them. He was so drunk they couldn't get him to pray. So the Chidushei said that's what Purim is like. With Purim, there's a tremendous kayak of tefillah on Purim. That's why don't we pray? Because we're shikker. So we don't take advantage of it. But if we would only take advantage, who knows, we could accomplish great things.